And Mr. President, while I realize the chair cannot respond, it is good to see my good friend in the chair. Normally on a Saturday, we'd see each other in the Senate gym, not on the Senate floor. Let me think for a moment which place we would rather be. I think I know. But in seriousness, Mr. President, today 9 of our 15 federal departments and several dozen agencies have shuttered their doors. And by doing that, they've denied vital services to millions of American citizens. Since midnight last night, just a few days before Christmas, more than 800,000 dedicated public servants and their families have been told not to expect their next paycheck for the foreseeable future. And there's one reason only, that our federal government has shut down today and countless Americans are living with uncertainty. That reason is President Donald J. Trump. The president is holding the federal government hostage for $5 billion of American taxpayer dollars for his unnecessary, ineffective, and expensive wall on the southern border. A wall, incidentally, he repeatedly promised, gave his word to the American taxpayers that Mexico would pay for. Now he wants American taxpayers to dig in their pockets and pay for it. You know, the president's irresponsible behavior is astounding. His job, like ours, is to keep the federal government operating for the hundreds of millions of Americans who depend on government services every day, from our national parks to housing services for the elderly, the disabled, our veterans, for assistance for our nation's farmers. In fact, 2 days ago, the President signed the Farm Bill and praised his efforts. Today, he's precipitated a shutdown that shuttered the doors to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's field offices, the same offices that farmers are going to have to go to understand this new law. But the worst part of all that is this was completely avoidable. We provided the president with several options to avoid this result. It's a case where he can't take yes for an answer. We offered to pass 6 full-year appropriations bills and a continuing resolution for Homeland, or a continuing resolution for all the remaining bills. Either of these options would have kept the government open. They would have provided more than $1 billion for border security, the very thing the president says he needs and cares most about. Plus the fact, signing them instead of having a needless shutdown would save taxpayers millions, even billions of dollars. But after rejecting both of these offers, the Senate passed by voice vote a 7-week continuing resolution. This would give us more time to negotiate and avert this catastrophe. Democrats and Republicans came together to pass it. The president had agreed to sign it. We finally had a path forward. But then Fox News and the right-wing media, Rush Limbaugh started criticizing the president's ego won out over his duties to the country. His ego was so bruised, he reversed courses. He went back on what he had agreed to. And here we are, exactly where the president wanted to be, in the middle of a Trump shutdown. And for anyone doubting where responsibility lies, let's recall that the president has publicly called for a government shutdown. How many times over the past year? No fewer than 25 times. Just last week, he declared he'd be proud to shut down the government unless we capitulate to his demands. Proud? I've been here with every president, Republican and Democrat, since President Gerald Ford. It's one of the most reckless statements I've ever heard uttered by a president of the United States. And now he has made good on his threat. His pride has won out, and the Trump shutdown has begun. How long is it going to last? Who knows? Yesterday, the president promised us it'd last a long time. And then he promised us it'd be a short shutdown. Even in this, his behavior is erratic. So how did we get here? Is there a legitimate crisis precipitating the shutdown? Is the president playing games with the lives and livelihoods of American citizens to solve some immediate problem that threatens our nation? No, of course not. In caving to the most extreme sliver of his base, President Trump is throwing what many have described as a childish tantrum because he wants money to fulfill a cynical promise he made repeatedly on the campaign trail. More of a symbolic prize than a sensible policy solution. This wasteful wall, a wall, incidentally, he promised Mexico would pay for, not the American taxpayers. This wasteful wall that he now wants to build to the American taxpayers would do more to preserve the president's ego than would to protect the American people. But I believe it's the natural result of the president's years-long demonization and vilification of immigrants. Years during which the president rallied his base with falsehoods, fantasies, where vulnerable women and children are portrayed as hordes of gang members and terrorists invading our country. The sad reality, as all of us Republicans and Democrats know, many of these people coming to our country are fleeing desperate situations in their home countries. And they're looking for sanctuary. They aren't coming here to perpetuate violence, they're running from it. So let me be clear. There is no crisis that requires us to build a 30-foot wall between us and our neighbors to the south. The president's hateful rhetoric about a crisis on our southern border does not reflect reality. At the end of 2017, arrests of people attempting to enter the U.S. illegally dropped to historic lows. Between 2000 and 2018, border apprehensions fell sharply from 1.6 million in fiscal year 2000 to approximately 400,000 in fiscal year 2018. That's a 75% drop. Not only do the facts on the ground not warrant spending billions of American taxpayer dollars on a big, beautiful wall, as the president likes to call it, it's not who we are as nations. We are a country founded by immigrants. Just as my maternal grandparents came to Vermont from Italy, my paternal great-great-grandparents came to Vermont from Ireland, or my wife's parents came to Vermont from the province of Quebec in Canada. We even look at our immigrant founding of this country. Then if we want to wall ourselves off from our neighbors, it's not only an expensive waste of American taxpayers' dollars, it's immoral, it's ineffective, it's an affront to everything this country is supposed to stand for. To build a wall, the president wants to seize land from ranchers and farmers in Texas and other border states, seize lands from farmers and ranchers and land that's been in their family for generations. he would need to construct walls through wildlife refuges and nature preserves, basically destroying them. And ironically, we'd end up walling ourselves off from the Rio Grande in the process, essentially ceding the river to Mexico. And after all that, and after billions of wasted taxpayer dollars, what would it accomplish? Would it stop people from fleeing violence in their home countries and seeking sanctuary? No. Would it stop drug smugglers and human traffickers from engaging in illegal activity? Definitely no. You know, and so many have said, show me a 30-foot wall, I'll show you a 31-foot ladder or a tunnel. To address these complex issues, we need real solutions, not bumper sticker slogans, not angry tweets. Now, everyone agrees that we need to keep our border safe and secure. But it's got to be smart border security that works. New technology is proven to work on the border and our ports of entry. New air and marine assets, additional personnel were needed. A 30-foot wall is symbolic and unneeded. And even if we needed to build it, thought we needed to build it, what is the rush? Over the past 2 years, Congress has provided nearly $1.7 billion to build or replace fencing on the southern border. But the administration has hardly spent any of that money, and the projects it's undertaken have been handled in such a way they've ballooned in cost. So we gave them the $1.7 billion, demanding now more. How much of the $1.7 billion did he spend? 6%. 6% of these funds have been spent. We've recently learned that one project in the Rio Grande Valley that was supposed to cost $445 million will now cost the American taxpayers nearly $787 million. 77% cost overrun, a price tag, $31.5 billion each and every mile. So we've seen that you can't really trust the administration to be responsible with the money we've already provided, let alone trust it to spend responsibly the additional money the president is demanding. Let's put an end to this nonsense once and for all. We have an easy way of doing it. We could finish 6 of the 7 appropriations bills right now while we continue to debate these other issues. These bills are the product of bipartisan compromise where Republicans and Democrats came together. They provide billions of dollars in new resources to address critical needs of the American people. They protect U.S. national security. These 6 bills that we've already agreed on, Republicans and Democrats, would provide much-needed funding to help combat our nation's opioid epidemic and critical investments in infrastructure, help us rebuild our nation's crumbling roads, bridges, and highways. They provide resources to protect the environment, to help ensure the water we drink, the air we breathe, is safe and clean for this generation, for our children, and for the next. And they support key allies in national security programs that enable the United States to be a global leader, a role that's being increasingly challenged by China and Russia. So I have to ask, is the president really going to hold the American people hostage over a wall that he, time and time again, promised Mexico would pay for? Is he really going to force hundreds of thousands of federal employees, including the very agency he depends upon to carry out his immigration enforcement policies, to work without pay over the Christmas holiday? Is he really going to tell millions of Americans, including his most ardent supporters, that he could care less whether they're cut off from critical government services, purely in service of his own vanity. You know, the president has apparently decided that fighting a symbolic fight for a shiny object is more important than keeping our government running for the American people. It's the height of irresponsibility. Negotiations with Chairman Shelby and Leader McConnell continue in good faith. I am here this weekend to continue and have talked with members of both parties. But we all come to the same conclusion. We can agree easily, Republicans and Democrats. But we can only succeed if the president decides to do what we've done, and that is put the country first. The President of the United States, he owes that to the American people. He owes reality, not rhetoric. Mr. President, do not see another member seeking recognition on a different subject. I will speak further about this, and I would ask consent that the editorial in yesterday's New York Times about General Mattis, Secretary Mattis, be placed in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, like so many people, Republicans and Democrats, I was stunned to hear that Secretary Mattis was going to be leaving. I understand his reasons. He has said that he has always felt a duty to uphold the interests of the United States, the security of the United States, to uphold our agreements with other countries for the security of democracy. He felt, in effect, the president disagreed with him on that, felt otherwise, so the president should be entitled to have somebody who takes differing views. Unfortunately, the views of General Mattis were views that were a result of decades of service to this country. As a Marine in combat, a Marine as commanding, a four-star general, one who had the strong, strong respect of Republicans and Democrats alike. Certainly the strong respect of those who have served in the military and know what it means to actually stand up for this country, not just in rhetoric, but by putting their lives on the line in the battlefield. I've always admired General Mattis. I applaud his service to the United States of America. And I know he is a man that can leave with his head held high. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of quorum.